Hello and welcome to my video of testing some DC fast charging with my Rivian R1S Gen 2 on update 2024.51. So we did 4 tests, and I'm throwing the graphs up now so you can pause right at the start of the video. There are also going to be chapters in the video. I think what you should just be aware of is every test was very different, and there were many different variables going into that test. So no two curves were actually the same, and we haven't really done many more than 4. So there's a lot of noise in the data, but hopefully this is useful to you. Okay, so we are going to test out the charging after a few of the updates. There was the December update and the January update. Both said that they have improved charging for the Gen 2 max packs, and we can go over those notes in a bit. We are on 9%, and we are going to go to this Rivian charger in like Flatirons, and we're going to select it and navigate to it just so the battery is preconditioning and everything. It should be pretty good to test. The outdoor temperature is kind of like 57. It might warm the battery a little bit as it preconditions on the way there, but yeah, it should be a pretty good test for this one. We should just be able to select this and press go. And then I think it should probably start preconditioning almost immediately because we are close. So we will arrive in 8 minutes. Okay, let's get going. You can see it's preparing the battery for fast charging, and we will be there in 7 minutes, it thinks. So the battery is currently 62. We'll see what it's doing with the preconditioning. It might heat it up just a little bit to get towards the middle there. Yeah, and this is kind of what the cabin looks like when you are driving the Rivian at nighttime. So we currently have like the purple lights set up. One thing that's really weird compared to normal cars is that like some of the ambient lighting is on your feet. So like I'm not used to seeing my feet at nighttime in cars, but now you can, I guess. Then it's on one pedal driving. Yeah. So you can also see the driver's feet, which is really weird. Then the ambient lighting is on the second row as well. Okay, so we are 3 minutes away from the charger and still preconditioning, and basically it has been warming it up a little bit. We're now at 67 degrees. So the charger just showed up as 5 out of 6 stalls. So that means that someone is there. So we'll just have to like pick a charger that's quite far away from them. So hopefully we won't be load sharing. I'm not sure if this Rivian one in this location has load sharing and how it works on which stalls, but we'll hopefully try to avoid that. Pulling up. So we'll probably go on the like very left-hand one, since this red truck is on the right-hand one. And the battery is basically at the perfect temperature, 73 right in the middle. We're on 6%. So it looks like we got a Gen 1 red truck charging. So need to flip this. Ooh. Okay, 6%. Nice. Quick handshake. Oh, there we go. So good ramp up so far, actually. We might even see like 210. People say that they get 210, but we've got like 201 or like 203, I think, a little bit. But I've never seen like a fat 210. Okay, and then so this is what I was talking about. You can see in update 2024.47, which was released around mid-December 2024. For the Gen 2, there's all this stuff. You know, they're like, oh, happy holidays. There was the holiday update with the like jingle bells, lock sound, Google Cast and like YouTube Cast, or Google Cast and YouTube app, Cirrus, the new key fobs, scheduling your drive, driver assistance improvements, all of this. And then if you scroll all the way down, basically I had to like, use Command F to find it again. You can see down here, just a little bullet point, improve the charge time for DC fast charging for vehicles with large and max batteries. We have the max battery, thanks to Kyle from Out of Spec for the feedback. So Kyle did this video where they talked about the charging speed, I think in their like 15 minutes test, and it was really bad. And so here's this update, and like not much fanfare or anything. It's down in this like additional improvement section. And then mid-January we got 2024.51, right? which has all of this stuff again. And then vehicle alarm improvements, smart turn signals. And then in additional improvements, you can see that charging efficiency and thermal improvements. Improve the charging efficiency of dual motor large and max batteries. So they don't specifically say DC fast charging, so they could be referring to slow charging, but I don't know, reads to me like it could be improved charging as well. So basically there have been two updates, 2024, I think 47 or something, and 51, that both say they have improved charging. So that's what this car has. Updates? Here we go. So we can see that the current system version is 2024 51.30. You can actually look at the patch notes in here as well. Additional improvements, charging and thermal efficiency improvements. Oh, we're at like 205. We're at a mythical 206, 205 at 32%. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah, so you can see here, this is a better route planner. If you pay for the subscription, you can get live data, and so you can see a better graph. You can also see it in the Rivian app, right? So if I come here, and then the Rivian app has like, it's nice, but there's a lot of like weird menus. So if I come down to charging, or you can also go at the top, if I go here, and then there's this charging session that says charging at 205 with a little arrow. If I press that, and then I scroll down, and I kind of tuck it away, you can see that there's this graph, which is a bit more simplified than the a better route planner one, but basically the green bar is going up as your percentage. So you can see ours have gone up steadily. And then this is like a smoothed off charging curve. So you can see we ramped up very quickly to 191, 195, and we stayed around 195, 197 for a long time. And recently we just bumped up, little bump, to 206 at around 30%, which is interesting. But this is also like, this is best case scenario, like perfect temperature, and outside is not too cold or hot. Not too hot, yeah. No direct sunlight. And we're not soaking the battery. Like we haven't done any other DC fast charging sessions in like a week. So we literally spiked at 208 actually for a little, 208 for a little bit, for about, I don't know, 5-6%, like 31, 30-ish to about 36. So weird, like they've definitely given the charging curve a little bit of juice to try and get as much speed out of it as possible. So, by the way, if you're just listening to this video or not paying close attention, the long periods of silence are me time-lapsing the charging at times 60. So, like 1 minute is an hour. So yeah, I didn't put any music in or anything. So if there's just silence, it's because there's a time-lapse happening. Okay, so we're at 70% now, and it was struggling to hold 120, so it's down a little bit. Okay, so it's 72%. We have now done a big drop from like 115-ish kilowatts that it was holding for a while to 98. Okay, so at 80%, you'll see that it actually says slower charging close to full charge, and that's like very true. We're down to 72, 73. So we will do to 85, and then once we get to 85, we will wrap it up, because you can imagine what the last 15% looks like. Slow and painful unless you're charging overnight for a road trip in the morning, pretty much. Okay, so we're at 85% now. We'll just finish off this percentage. It charges for a little bit at the target percent. You can see we dipped all the way down to 59 kilowatts. There we go, finished. I'll go unplug it. Here's the summary. Just over a kilowatt used on cooling the battery, and just under a kilowatt used on accessories, and then the rest into the battery pack. 85%. This would have costed us $47 basically. Alright, so we're heading back home now, but basically you can see the battery temperature is 125, right? So it was in the middle before at like, I forget what it was, like 70-ish, and the DC fast charging definitely heats it up a lot. So now your issue happens when you're driving around in like hot weather, like 100 degrees, for example, and you do multiple of these like back to back, while road tripping. In that scenario, you would definitely see lower charging speeds across the whole session, basically, right from when you plug in. So this was the best possible scenario, like good mild temperatures, hadn't done any DC fast charging before, just one session, basically. Here's a quick clip of the dynamic matrix LEDs in action. You can see it darkening out the area over the oncoming cars. And then once they get close, it's actually going to turn off the high beams completely. Charge test 1. For this one, the temperature was probably the most reasonable at about 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and we did precondition. When we got to the charger, we started at 6% and went up to 85 over the course of 54 minutes, which is 1.46% per minute. This was actually the fastest out of the 4 tests we did. And I think Rivian would consider this pretty much the ideal charging curve that they're looking for under like best conditions. You can see we go up pretty quickly and then we hover around 200 for quite a while. We even get to like 208, around 30% up to 35% or so. And then once we hit 40%, it just ramps down gently over the course of the next 10% to around 50%. And then it hangs out at around 120 for a long time, down to about 113 at 72%. And then it really ramps down from 72% to 85, ending at 60 kilowatts. So this is definitely like the battery pack's temperature coming in and like causing these ramp downs. So it seems like it can hold 200 for a decent amount of time, and then 120 for another like long stint. And then once you get to the high battery percentages, it definitely drops down. So looking at this, if you were like road tripping, for example, you would definitely want to probably unplug at around 50% because you've seen the best you're going to see, and definitely at 70%. However, the conditions in road tripping might be worse if the outdoor temperature was higher, or if you had done multiple fast charging sessions in one day. Okay, so we are en route to charging test round 2. We are navigating to the charger, however, it hasn't started preconditioning. And now we are on 7%, so I'm not sure if it's because it thinks we are too low on battery or we're too far away. We still have 15 minutes till we get there, according to the car. If you look at the stats, the battery is pretty cold at 46 degrees, so I would expect it to precondition to make the battery a bit warmer if it can. So that is interesting. Check in when we get closer, I guess. Oh, and then this is actually one of the accessories we got recently. It's the off-roam Rivian like dash mount for phones. We got the like grabby one. Because we don't have MagSafe everything. I think in the future we will probably get the MagSafe one if we can. And yeah, and there's also all-weather mats down here. So those have been good as well. These ones are from Smartliner, and the reason we got them is because the lip extends quite far over the edge of the car towards the door. Okay, so that's Denver way out there. And we're having a bit of fun because we left with 8%, and it was only like, I don't know, maybe 5 miles that we went, and we dropped from 8 to 3 very quickly. I think because the efficiency was pretty poor, but
I think it's cold. It's 2% now.
Yikes. I think, well, no, I think it's because it actually didn't know what the percentage was in the battery like properly. So we're on 2%. We are close to the charger, but we will see how this goes. Okay, so we are close to the charger. We actually dropped to 2% at the like sort of highest point of our route. We've like driven down the hill now, and we actually did go back up to 3 from like regenning. So we'll see. We're now less than a mile to the charger, so things are looking pretty good, but very dicey. I don't think we've been lower than 2% ever in this car. There we are. We are very close, half a mile. So I think 3% will definitely be enough to get us here, but we thought 8% would get us here on like 6% kind of, but we just dropped 5% like extremely quickly. The efficiency wasn't even that bad. I think it was just a bit confused about the actual charge level in the battery. Okay, here they are, rolling in at 3%. Charge test 2. Okay, so we just plugged in a couple minutes ago, basically. We are now up to 11%, and we're creeping up to 200 kilowatts. This one we didn't precondition, so we might see it, oh, there we go, 193. Take a little while to creep up as the battery temperature comes up, and we were very low, we were on 3%. But I expect to see similar, like it'll probably hang around 200 for a while, maybe go up to like 208, 210, and then maybe drop off at 40%, I think is what we saw last time. Okay, so we're now at 46%, doing 160-ish kilowatts still, which is like not bad, but this charging session was a lot less consistent than the previous one where we preconditioned and came in around 6%. This one we couldn't precondition, came in around 3%, maybe even a bit lower. Battery was cold, so it's been a very weird session so far. But I think we're higher at 47% now than we were in the previous session. So realistically, it's going to be interesting to see how the total time of the charging session is for each of these sessions. This one's starting at 3, the other one's starting at 6, and both going to 85. Maybe just the area under the graph will actually kind of equalize, because I think we dropped off 163 or 160 more at this percentage level last time. Okay, so we're almost done. We're on 84% now. 1 more percent to go, and we have dropped down all the way to 50 kilowatts. I don't know, it doesn't feel like too much worse than the other one, but it was far less consistent, so we'll see. We'll compare the total times in the end and see what it looks like, but yeah, almost finished up here. Okay, we're done. I'm gonna go and unplug it. Okay, charging test 2. This one we couldn't precondition because the battery was too low, and the temperatures were quite a bit colder at around 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And we charged from 3% to 85 in the end, which took 59 minutes at a percentage of 1.38% per minute. So this was actually a pretty decent charging session, but what you can see from the curve is just the irregularity you get when the battery is cold or can't precondition. Basically, you can see it takes a lot longer to ramp up. Like we only get around 180 at 11%, or even like 190 for the first time at 20%, and you can see it spikes. But the interesting thing about this curve compared to the first curve is that it ramps down far slower. Like we're still doing 140 at like 60%, and then there's a big drop at 65% where we drop down to 100. And this is probably because this is where the battery starts to get hot. But with the outdoor temperature being like just about freezing, it probably helped like keep this at bay for a while. And then the start was just bumpy because the battery was cold. So in the end, we charged 3% more than the previous test, and it took us 5 or 4 minutes-ish longer. So this one wasn't actually too bad, given the fact that there was no preconditioning, and I guess it wasn't too cold below freezing, so the battery was okay, and we did drive it to the station. So yeah, this is just a really good example of why battery preconditioning is important if you want it to ramp up to quick speeds near the start of the curve. But you can see as time goes on, it kind of recovers that later on by ramping down slower because of the battery temperature being cooler and taking longer to overheat, basically.
1.9 efficiency and about 10% battery. think this will all probably go down because it is a bit cold out. It's 17 degrees. But it is supposedly preparing for fast charging. So we'll see if that makes a difference this time. Battery's at 51 degrees. And we'll see how much it goes up. If I remember to show it again before I start charging. So at 6%, getting great efficiency. I think just because it's a bit cold. This has updated. Should arrive with 12 miles. I'll be pretty much empty. And it is preparing the battery for fast charging. At 5% now, but I just noticed it stopped preparing the battery for fast charging. So I don't know if it's actually better to charge when you have higher battery so that it gives you a chance to actually precondition the battery. Just got to the chargers at 6% battery because you go downhill to get here, and so you actually regen almost a whole percentage point. Let's see. At about 5%, the battery stopped preparing for fast charging, so we're only at about 59%. But we will charge. I think I have a long charge ahead of me, but we'll see how it goes. Trusty charger. Okay. It's fun to film with one hand. So yep, plugged in. About 14 degrees. And charging. So we'll see how fast this goes. I was here actually earlier, and I don't think I broke 100. Don't know if you can hear that, making some slightly strange noises. It might be the heat pump. Okay, that's weird. It just dropped back down to 97. So it's back at 197, but it's making weird noises. Still at 192 at about 40%. It's been a bit all over the place, but if it holds this, I would be happy. So camera battery died. This charging is slow, so nothing all that interesting happened. I did get the slower close to full charge alert. So just trying to get the last 5% before I head out of here. Done. Took an hour and 5 minutes. At the end, it's popular today. There's 2 others. So let's check this. Okay. Is it? Battery is quite warm now.
Let's just say I have a newfound appreciation for video editors as I'm like 8 hours into editing this video. Anyways, charging test 3. This was done by my partner while I was out, but this was a very interesting one. So basically, The preconditioning kind of worked, kind of didn't. As you saw, the battery did heat up a little bit before arriving, which is good because this was the coldest test we did at 16 degrees Fahrenheit, so well below freezing basically. And we went from 6 to 85% over the course of 64 minutes, which is 1.23% per minute. So as you can see, this is basically the most messed up test we had, I would say. We get this weird plateau till about 10% at like 80 kilowatts where, I don't know, the battery is just figuring out what's going on. Then we get this crazy spike to 175 for about 2% before it drops back down and freaks out, and then it climbs back up and kind of holds around 200 for a little while with this one little dip to 150 in the middle. It keeps on holding 200, 200-ish to about 50%, and then actually holds 160 to about 54%, and then it drops down, and it drops down very low. And this is kind of weird. It drops all the way down to 70 after that initial peak at like 60%. It's at 70 for a very long period of time, and it even raises up a little bit to 75 towards the end. And then when you saw at the end of the test, the battery was extremely hot. And I believe we actually did get some like thermal system warnings after this test. So basically, I would say this stressed the battery the most out of all the tests, which is interesting because it was cold, but then the battery somehow got very hot. So it's just like a very all over test. But basically, this one really shows how weird charging can be and very cold temperatures, and how the thermal system of the Rivian, even in the Gen 2s, is a little bit temperamental. So I'm not sure if the heat pump was working well at this temperature or what, but realistically it shouldn't have needed to work too hard to cool the battery in 16 degrees Fahrenheit. So I don't know, this is an odd test, and it came out in the wash because you can see that this was the longest test we have at 64 minutes. So almost 10 minutes longer than some of the other tests. Okay, so we are on our way to the charger again. Battery percentage is 12%. It was 15 when we set out, but yep. Basically this time it's 36 degrees, so pretty chilly, and the battery is preconditioning for the charging because we have enough juice, basically. So I assume it will be warming. If we have a look, 47, it's probably going to go up. The battery did warm up a little bit to 58 degrees, so it's a little bit below ideal, but I think it's better than no preconditioning. The battery percentage is 10%, so this is actually the highest battery state of charge that we've done this test on. Plugging them in, 10%. By the way, this is what we're doing on Valentine's Day. We're sitting in a Rivian eating Taco Bell, watching it charge for the 4th time. There's a contract girl next to me. She's crazy. Save me. If anyone hears this, help. Okay, so we're at 84% now, almost done. 85 will be done. This was actually a good session. It's on 52 minutes. I know our first session, we were a little bit lower, and it finished in 53. So this might finish in 53 as well once it's finished this last percentage point. Yeah, we're just at 53 minutes now. But this was actually a pretty decent session, even with all the up and down we saw at the start. No, we didn't even go over 200 kilowatts. Okay, we're done. 54 minutes, so not too bad. And the final temperature we went up to was 114. So charging test 4, what is there to say about this one? It's kind of interesting. Low temperature managed to precondition, and you can see this where it ramps up very quickly, but unlike the first test, it kind of fails to find its groove and it bounces around the top end a little bit and never actually goes over 200. It's also a shorter charging test than the first charging test, going from 10 to 85%, and in 54 minutes at 1.39% per minute. So almost as good as the first test. And where this one made up for its bumpy ride at the start of the curve is going deeper into the pack. So this one actually held 135 all the way to 64%, whereas the other curve, the first charging test, was down at 120 at like 50%, I believe. And this is most likely due to the temperature being a lot lower than the first charging test, so the battery was able to keep itself cooled deeper into the charging cycle. So what we have here on this monstrous graph is kilowatts over time and state of charge over time. It is a little bit tricky to look at, but it is good having all the data on one page. And what you can really see here is just how variable things can be depending on the situation, like what state of charge you're starting from, the outdoor temperature, the temperature of the battery, and whether you preconditioned, basically affecting the battery's temperature. So you can see here 6%, 60 degrees with preconditioning gives us like the most expected curve. But then you can also see compared to the fourth curve, we get a similar overall time, but a very different shape where it holds the charge higher for longer and then actually drops down, and then they kind of meet in the end. And then tests 2 and 3 are just very interesting, mostly due to the lack of preconditioning and the battery's temperature. But you can draw some constants out of this. Basically, if you are dropping below like 130-ish, you have probably seen the highest charging you will, obviously, and it's a pretty good time to think of unplugging. So for example, you can see here coming from 6%, the blue state of charge line goes the highest, the fastest, so it's steepest, whereas the green is a bit flatter for longer, and then because of the lower outdoor temperatures, I suspect, it actually managed to hold higher and take over the blue, obviously starting at a higher percentage, but still it was above the blue, and then they kind of meet towards the end. And then you can see that if you're in a cold situation and you don't precondition the battery, or just a little bit, this is the yellow line, you can end up with some very weird thermal behavior where you kind of get a slow ramp up and then you get a decent charging rate and then it drops off very quickly. So yeah, overall I would just say like watch your kilowatts. Once you're at 120 or below, you are pretty much ramped down, and you're going to be holding that till about 70% if you're lucky, and then it will go down below 100 kilowatts.